on May 26th, 2021. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining on this evening. I'm on the countdown for my final meetings. My last meeting as chair will be in June. Similar to previous meetings that we've done on Zoom, I'll go first through a roll call. Then we have 4 people who have agreed to introduce themselves. And then we'll move on with the rest of the meeting. Franklin County Youth, Egan.
Here.
Alberg Town, Alton. Alberg Town and Alberg Village, Terry Tatro called and he's not here. Bakersfield, Bill Irwin.
Here.
Berkshire, Vincent Hickey. Berkshire, Claude Sharon. Enosburg Falls, Leonard Sharon. Enosburg Falls in Town, Sean Kyo said that he would not be here. From Fairfax, Colleen Steen. Brad. From Fairfield, Alicia LaRock. Brian Doobie.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you, Brian. From Fletcher, Lynn Douglas. I think I saw one.
Here, I'm here.
From Fletcher, Lori Rupel.
I'm here.
From Franklin, Yvonne Donderan.
Here.
From Franklin, Wesley Kempton. From Georgia, Scott St. Ange. Kirk Waite is here. From Grand Isle, Barclay Morris.
Yeah, I'm here.
Howard DeMars. From Highgate, Richard Noel.
I'm here.
From Isle of Mont, Sylvia Jensen. From Montgomery, Charlie Hancock. From North Hero, Andy Alling.
Here.
From Richford, Rowena Brown.
I'm here.
From Sheldon, Jeff Kane. From South Hero, we have a new representative from South Hero, Peter Zamore.
Here,
Welcome.
thank you very much.
Bob Berman.
Here.
From St. Albans City, Marty Manahan. And Laz called and said he could not make it, Laz Skangas. From St. Albans Town, Sarah Had.
Sarah
Alban,
let me know she couldn't come.
okay, thank you. Alban Vojo.
Here.
From Swanton Town, Harold Garrett. Ross Lavoy. From Swanton Village, Elizabeth Nance.
Thank you, Kirk, for doing this, so that way I don't have to remember if I'm the village or the town.
Well, thank you for joining because I think you're the one who put us over the edge to have a quorum.
Oh, good.
And from the village, Neil Spear. And
I
just to confirm, we do have a quorum, Catherine.
We do.
Great. So hopefully this isn't a surprise to the people that I'll call out, but Catherine gave me 4 names of people who happily volunteered to give a brief introduction of themselves, starting with Barclay Morris.
Sure. I hope this doesn't go on too long. I was born and grew up in Southern Connecticut and came to UVM in 1969. Finished my bachelor's at UNH in 1973 and immediately moved back to Vermont. I spent 5 years learning the carpentry trade from an old master carpenter and started my own building business in 1983. I built homes and barns and repaired church steeples and restored 200-year-old homes. I married Ellen Sabo, now Ellen Sabo Morris, in 1979, and we've skied and sailed and windsurfed and biked and canoed and best of all, skydived together for 42 years now. We moved to Grand Isle in 1988, and I spent time on the Zoning Board of Adjustment and then 10 years on the Planning Commission. I served on the board of directors for the Ruggles Foundation in Burlington, which was a home for retired teachers. It's now part of the Cathedral Square umbrella. This is my second stint on NRPC and TAC, and I think I came back on in about 2016. I retired 2 years ago, and I'm still trying to catch up on all the deferred maintenance on my own home. Too much energy working on other people's homes for 43 years. I still bike, I skydive, and we have season tickets to UVM hockey. We've had those for over 40 years. I'll be 70 in July, and my current motto is I may look my age, but I refuse to act my age. I serve on NRPC because everyone in the select board and the planning commission in Grand Isle see it as just one more burden. If they ever find out how wrong they are, I'll probably be spending Wednesday evenings at home. But in a nutshell, that's me.
Thank you very much, Barclay. And some would argue you haven't grown all the way up yet. Richard Noel.
It's not an argument.
I think we came from a similar area, Barclay. I was born, believe it or not, down in Connecticut also. But my claim to fame was French Canadian parents, and I started first grade, I couldn't speak English. But I learned. I've always enjoyed working on farms. I started working out when I was 10, and I had my Social Security card at 12, full-time farm boy. The farms in Connecticut were petering out, and I came up to Vermont. I had relatives up here, plus I could still speak French. So it helped out in border negotiations with machinery and grain, etc. I started with my own herd, my own farm in 72. I was 25 years old, and supposedly I wasn't supposed to make it, but I fooled them. When I started, we were producing 2 gallons of milk per cow. When I sold my cattle, we were producing 9 gallons of milk per cow. We had one of the highest, back then, protein was just coming into existence. We had one of the highest protein averages in all of New England. My cattle went to 6 different states and Canada. I'm a semi-retired farmer now. We sold the big farm, 300 acres, and my retirement farm is 45 acres, and I do some haying, some cutting wood, and working in my sugar bush. And that's my retirement. I'm gonna come sliding in, like Barclay said, dust flying, stitches torn open, but I'm here, God.
Thank you, Richard. Andy Alling.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I just want to say how happy I am to be part of this commission. I've been very impressed with the professionalism and the dedication of all the staff and the fellow commissioners. For myself, I was born and raised in Maine, grew up in Portland. I graduated from the University of Maine in 1973, which puts me right in line with Barclay, age-wise. I had a degree in civil engineering. I ended up spending my entire career in the construction industry, originally with a company based in Maine, Chinbro. And for those of you that have driven through the islands in the last couple of years, you'll know they're the contractor that's replacing the drawbridge between Grand Isle and North Hero. Spent 15 good years with them. Only problem was I was mostly working out on projects which involved pulling up stakes and moving around quite frequently. So in 1988, I decided it was time for a change, started looking around. I ended up receiving an offer from what was then Pittsburgh Construction. It's now PC Construction. They offered me a job in Vermont. I'd only been here a couple times before that, but I had been pretty impressed. Ended up accepting the offer, and so I've been in Vermont ever since 1988. Ended up spending my next 28 years with PC until I retired in 2016. As far as my history here in North Hero, I became single back in 2003. I'd always had a dream of living next to the water, so I figured that was a good opportunity to do it. And having spent some time in the islands, I knew it was a great place to be, so I started my search up here. And within a couple of weeks, I found a place at the north end of North Hero, moved up there, loved it. The only negative is I was still commuting to work in South Burlington at the time. Pretty long commute, you know, on top of long days, but I enjoyed living there. One thing that did benefit me is I realized the pleasures of satellite radio with the long commutes either way. So anyway, retired in 2016. At that point, I decided it was time to start giving something back to the community other than my tax dollars. So the first thing I did is I became a volunteer driver for cider, which I'm still doing. Volunteered as a trail steward here in North Hero. We have two wonderful natural areas, and so I help the Recreation Committee with maintenance projects and various things there. In 2018, I joined the Water Board here in North Hero. Timing ended up being pretty good because they were just starting preliminary planning on an addition to our filter plant. And with my construction background, I was able to oversee that project on behalf of the town. And we finished it successfully last year. At the urging of one of the select board members, I joined Nrpc at the beginning of last year. And I'm proud to say I haven't missed any meetings yet. They've been very informative. And then this past March, for the first time in my life, I ran for elective office and got voted on to the local planning commission. So that's kind of my professional history. As far as activities in the summer, I love being out on the lake. I love riding my bicycle around the islands, hiking, occasional round the golf. In the winter, I love skiing, both cross country and downhill, do some snowshoeing, and love traveling any time of the year. Of course, that's been somewhat curtailed for the past year. So that's kind of it. As far as looking ahead, our local planning commission is just starting the process of reviewing and updating our zoning regulations. So we're certainly going to be looking to the regional commission for some assistance and guidance in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. And Rowena Brown.
Yeah, hi. Well, I moved up here in Vermont in 1990. My father had been born in New Hampshire and raised between New Hampshire and Vermont, and actually went to school in Richford. And he kept telling my mother all the time when I was growing up how wonderful Vermont was. So he finally got her to move up, and then he encouraged me to move up. I had grown up out in the Midwest, out in Nebraska. And I came up here, did a lot of temporary jobs. And then in 1998, wound up with a job with a financial institution working with mortgages. And I've been doing that for the past 23 years. I started doing things with the town. And they asked me to come on the Development Review Board, which I've been on there for 10 years, and the last 6, I think, have been chairman of it. And then they said, well, if you're doing that, why don't you go to the regional planning? We need somebody that will attend the meetings. And they said, can you show up for meetings? And I said, sure. And I've been learning a lot from the regional planning, and it's been very informative. I've really enjoyed it. I thank you for all the help that I've had with things with the Development Review Board, and that's about it.
Thank you very much. It's always, it's been fun listening to each person introduce themselves and get to know a bit about how many similarities we have and how many differences we have, and where we share things that we do and have our individual things as well. Catherine, was any of staff going to do an introduction tonight?
Since we have so many guests here, we can do staff another night. We're always around.
Sounds good. Opportunity for public comment. Anybody have anything they'd like to bring up during that part of our agenda? If not, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. We're going to have a discussion on municipal declaration of inclusion. We have Dave Benyon from Franklin Select Board here and Bob Harnish, I may have butchered your names, from Pittsford. Welcome. And I'll pass the baton over to whichever one of you wants to speak first. Each of you should have gotten in your packet some information on this topic. Town of Franklin's Declaration of Inclusion, as well as the State of Vermont Executive Department of Proclamation of Inclusion, and then Town of Middlebury Select Board Statement of Equity and Racial Justice.
All right, Kirk, thank you. My name is Bob Harnish, and I'll lead off today. Dave and I will be speaking about something we call the Declaration of Inclusion, as you said. And the sample that was sent out to you is the version that was adopted unanimously by our Rutland Board of Aldermen a week or two ago, and about 10 other towns, including Franklin, which was the first town and really the genesis of this entire movement. So how is it that I come to be here speaking to you about a declaration of inclusion? To explain, I need to go back to last summer. But first, what is a declaration of inclusion? The Declaration of Inclusion is an affirmation and an aspiration that we of a certain town, and now the state of Vermont, recognize that human diversity can be defined as differences in race, ethnicity, religious beliefs, physical and mental capabilities, among other differences, and that these diversities exist in our population here in Vermont. We recognize that all people have hopes and dreams. All people yearn for recognition and struggle with disappointments. All people love their families and so on. We all have the same human aspirations. Fundamentally, we are all very similar. So why not let the world know that our community commits to being visible, vocal, and supportive in our efforts to ensure equity and justice, and that we are willing to address overt and systemic racism in our ordinances, our hiring practices, our employee manuals, etc., and that we welcome diversity in our population. And by the way, isn't it diversity that makes our United States the leader in the world in almost every category one could name? Most economy on the planet. So anyway, back to last summer. At the time of the death of Congressman John Lewis, there were video clips of demonstrations in the American South and the bloody marches over the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. I began thinking, where was I during the 1960s when all this was happening, along with the marches and the unrest in the South? Perhaps some of you have had those same thoughts. I was just happy in my white skin and my part in the majority white population and trying to grow my business. It never occurred to me until much later that those marches were part of one of the great fundamental movements of our American culture. It was the great effort to nudge America closer to the ideal as expressed in our Constitution, that men are created equal. All men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. In a very real sense, that march still goes on. And so I called Al Wakefield, a Black friend of mine here in the Rutland area, and asked him what books I should be reading to better understand his experience of living life in these United States as a member of a minority, and especially as an African American. Al and his daughter, Shauna, suggested several titles, which I borrowed from the library and read. And then I read more. Then there was the murder of George Floyd, caught on videotape in all its awful detail, as we all know. And about that time, I was visiting with my cousin, David Benyon, who is with us tonight and who is on the Town of Franklin Select Board. He told me that they had just adopted a Declaration of Inclusion, and he gave me a copy. He said the town did not have a problem they were trying to correct, but rather the Select Board, struggling with population stagnation in the town and lack of economic vitality, wanted the town to issue a broad statement to the world at large that Franklin would welcome all people, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, etc. So back in my hometown of Pittsford, I began thinking, how might I present this to the Pittsford Select Board? So I presented it at one meeting and then spoke about it at a subsequent meeting and answered questions. I pointed out that this was not in response to a problem, but that if we were successful in attracting new residents, it could contribute to revitalizing the town center, increase badly needed tax dollars, and add to the dynamics of the town. There is no downside. After some questions, a motion was made to adopt the declaration, and it passed unanimously. So since then, 9 other towns have adopted the Declaration of Inclusion. Those towns are Brandon, Waterbury, Moortown, Middlebury, Pittsfield, Woodstock, Milton, Rutland City, and in addition to Franklin. We are actively working with Woodstock Town, Randolph, Bristol, Manchester, Bennington, Brattleboro, Chester, Springfield, Rutland Town, Heinsberg, and Norwich. Every week we get calls from someone who's heard about the Declaration of Inclusion and wants to know how to proceed in their town. So we've developed a packet, which I will send out to any of you who want it. You can just ask Catherine for my email, or perhaps she could send it out after this meeting. We're looking for people to present the concept in each town, hopefully every town in Vermont. And so if you or someone you know you think would be successful in presenting it to your town, I'd love to hear about it. So now Governor Scott, as Kirk mentioned, is very much on board, and earlier this month he issued a proclamation of inclusion for the state of Vermont and proclaimed the second week in May as Inclusion Week. The governor knows, and I will say that the governor knows, and I will also say that the declaration is only words and must be followed up with some effort by towns to dig into the town's operating procedures, hiring practices, etc., to uncover implicit bias or language that might make new residents feel unwelcome. So, rationale behind one town adopting the declaration, that's Franklin. I'll turn it over to David, who got me started on this wonderful journey, a journey that fits in so nicely with the broader national effort, now known as DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Dave?
Thank you, Bob. About a year and a half ago at one of our select board meetings, one of our members who had been vacationing in Maine with his wife and children came back and he said, wow, he said, we found this thing up in Maine, Declaration of Inclusion. And I thought maybe as a select board, we might want to look at it. So we did. At the time, Yvonne was on our select board. And after some discussion and tweaking the language a little bit, we unanimously approved it. As was said, partly we want to make make it known that Franklin is a welcoming place. It always has been a welcoming place. It's a great friendly little community, 1,400 people. Fairly diverse. It's a farming community, fairly conservative, but there was no objection. And we put this declaration out to a number of committees and groups to see what the reaction was going to be. And overall, basically, it was a positive reaction all the way around. And so we have it, we had it on our Facebook page for a while. We've got it on our website. And we're looking to do great things with that, just as part of rebranding ourselves a little bit and attracting new businesses and new residents.
So I think Dave and I would be happy to answer any questions.
So Dave, did the declaration lead to any concrete changes in any of your regulations or town ordinances or anything like that?
Well, it did lead us to examine them, and so far, no changes. Because what we found was that we have basically our regulations and our hiring practices and like that conform. As I said, Franklin has always been welcoming, and there's nothing in there that restricts due to any of the differences that that we might find in the community.
Other questions for Bob or for, I'm terrible with names, Bob or Dave?
Yeah, this is Bill Irwin from Bakersfield. Have either of you had any adverse reactions within your communities, or has almost all of it been positive reaction to these movements, let's say?
I would say the reaction has been either positive or neutral. We have not had anything negative. Bob, how about your community?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not sure. This is something I need to do here in Pittsford, and that is make sure it's on the website and that it's being discussed openly in the community. The select board passed it unanimously, but I'm not sure where they've gone with it from there. But it's important that there be some oversight, some plan for addressing the issues that may exist in the town ordinances and regulations.
Bob, you said you had an information packet. We could get your email from Catherine. Do you mind if she just sends it out to the commissioners?
Not at all. I'll send it to
email.
I'd be happy to send it to Catherine, and Catherine, you can forward it on. It's about
Great,
12,
thank you.
12 pages. Yeah.
So I'm curious, has a person of color entered your communities and bought anything in a store? And what was the reaction?
I don't know that I could answer that question. There are some people of color who live in the town. So I assume they go to the stores. How about you, Dave?
We do have some Hispanic residents. As far as going to the store, I would say it's a normal run of the mill. I mean, we have a very active little general store here in town. It's quite a busy hub. I mean, almost any time of the day, you can look down the street and see 6 to 15 vehicles out in front. So it's very, very busy. They have a little eating area there. A little deli. So, but these are people, there are some who live in town or just over the border from town, and they're just treated as a part of the community.
Great, great. So
Also, we,
yeah, go on.
Go ahead. Also, we have a fair number of French-speaking families in town. Also, although not for the last year, but we have a fair number of people coming over the border, and they are welcomed. When the borders open, during the summer, we see literally hundreds of bicyclists coming because the center of town is 4 miles from the Morse's Line border crossing. So,
no, I like your community for that reason. So I don't want to get too belligerent, but I'm worried about the Spanish people. And I'm sure, at least in Franklin County, I'm aware of several people who are undocumented. Do you think the people of Franklin would come to the defense and aid of a Spanish person who was undocumented when INS descends on your town?
I'm not sure, Al. That's a good question. Being right on a border, we do see I really can't recall having any problems in that area. So either they're keeping a low profile or there just has not been an issue.
There are. What I'm aware of is that unfortunately, the undocumented people, Spanish people, will stay on their farms, and then the farmer, the landowner, will go to the store to buy whatever they want as a way of getting around those people being seen by the federal authorities.
Mm-hmm.
So they're basically they're prisoners of the farm. Not that the farmer is holding them in, it's the United States government.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably something that throughout Franklin County.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm not going to name names, but I know of some town clerks who are probably not as welcoming as they could be, particularly to people who look Hispanic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a problem, and I think that those of who are welcoming need to step forth when the occasion arises and protect people.
Good, thank you.
The unfortunate part is they're illegal. And I have a problem since my parents had to get their papers, my grandparents had to get their papers, and one of them was sent back for a while. What is it they don't understand about illegal?
Well, okay, I agree. I was speaking of legals.
Okay, legals I can understand, even the ones in process. I have a sister-in-law who's Filipino, been 3 years, and they spent thousands of dollars, and she's still not an American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
They put so many hoops out there, it discourages some of them.
Mm-hmm.
At one time, they welcomed them. So my grandparents got their papers fairly easy, not easy, but a lot easier than today.
Mm-hmm.
Even my father.
I agree with you, Richard. My grandmother was an immigrant also. In answer to your question, though, if all the illegals were pulled out of Franklin County, most of the dairy farms would fail. So there's a balance there. You know,
Well, there isn't, there isn't, Al.
Pardon?
Balance is that the farmers aren't getting paid enough in the first place.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you, but you want to keep as much agriculture as possible. You don't want it to die totally.
Oh, I agree with you, and I can understand their position.
And since we're talking about inclusion and all of that, can we not refer to them as illegals, please?
Why? They are.
I'm not saying that they're not illegal, but just using the term illegals is, you can call them illegal
Is
aliens.
biased.
Well, okay, undocumented.
Okay, undocumented. I don't even, but it's the term just illegals. They're not, they may have an illegal status, but they are still
people.
Yeah. Oh, I can understand
Yeah,
that.
I just, it was just that single term of legals versus illegals.
Okay, undocumented is a better term then.
Okay, thank you. But it's a
And you
good,
see, I think that's the kind of thing that these declaration of inclusions are going to stimulate that kind of conversation where we have to be careful what we call them so that we don't make them feel unwelcome. I mean, yes, undocumented is stating a fact. They are undocumented. Illegal sounds like an accusation, which it may or may not be, but the different term, I think, is going to make them feel more welcome.
Agreed. Thank you.
well, and I think to that point too, I think sometimes we have to look at intent. You know, Swanton, as folks may be aware, last summer had an issue around some art boards. And it, you know, made WCAX and some other things. So it was a big issue for us last year. And some of that was driven by Facebook, where you sit behind a keyboard and you accuse people of intent that they necessarily didn't have. So we tried to have some conversations, but you had to be so careful with your words because people heard but didn't listen. So I think hearing people and generally trying to understand where they're coming from without assuming a negative intent is so important. Richard didn't mean anything, you know, or Al didn't mean anything, and that's not why I called it out, because I knew what the intent was. But sometimes we do use words without thinking, but it's just, you know, can we have the dialogue without automatically always assuming that people mean something negative, because generally they don't. They're just trying to tiptoe through a minefield, and you know, that we don't necessarily have the right tools to do it.
But I know that some of you will understand. Back in when I was younger, of course, now we're talking 60 years ago, we were called frogs, Canucks, and the Italians were wops, the guys they were Polacks, and that was just kind of normal conversation. We all had our nicknames, and we didn't get insulted as much as we do today. If I got called by my right name, I didn't know what the hell they were talking to sometimes.
I got a nickname too, Richard. It starts with a B and ends with an itch, and but anyway, it's a good discussion.
So I mean, I guess as I have listened, it appears that much of the value of these declarations of inclusion is really the conversation that occurs around them more than the actual document itself.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, the reality is, you know, there are issues in every town, whether we recognize them or not. And I think by having the conversation, it makes people more aware of where there may be systemic racism or systemic problems. And so, you know, I applaud you guys working on this. I think as a regional planning commission, we should be thinking about this and having these conversations, and should be thinking about, you know, where do we want to take it? You know,
I wanted to, I want to agree with you about the fact that having the conversation is valuable. And that's one of the reasons why I was so pleased that Bob and Dave could come today. And if Brad was here from Fairfax, he would be able to share what happened in Fairfax. It was not as pleasant of a conversation. The first time the resolution was brought before the select board, it was actually voted down because of concerns raised by several select board members that it made the town sound racist. It was a different statement. It wasn't the ones that we shared. And there were statements made by a couple of the select board members that no one in town is racist. They've never seen any racism. The next select board meeting, it was actually a very moving meeting in that many people of color who live in Fairfax took the time to put themselves out there and attend the meeting and share the racism that they experienced both in the community and in the schools. And the town did vote to reconsider the motion and adopted the resolution at the second meeting. So the conversation mattered, and it was really important. It's not the end, it's the beginning.
yeah, I mean, unless, I mean, at the end of the day, we need to have the conversation. These declarations can help drive the conversation, but unless we make concrete changes, I'm not sure we've accomplished much.
Right. Agreed.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, Catherine and Kirk, good closing words from both of you. And I'm sure Dave and I'm sure Dave joins me in saying thank you for having us, and thank you for the discussion.
Yes, Bob Berman had a question or a comment.
A couple of comments, I guess, from a regional planning commission standpoint. I guess I'd like to recommend that we consider our own statement, whether it's this one or another one. And I'd like to see us also be taking appropriate action in terms of going through all our plans and procedures and really make sure we're using the right words in what we put in our plans, and we're not causing issues or driving, whether it's a wealth difference or any other kind of diversity difference, but we should make sure we are all encompassing in everything we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And can I add?
So I'd like to take this into an action stage here somehow.
And can I add to Bob's statement that when we do that review, that we promote our community as a welcoming community of inclusion and diversity.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for taking your valuable time and meeting with us. And thank you for setting this up, Catherine. I do think that we talk about it around the fringes, but I think we need to bring it more to the front, as Bob had suggested, in the coming months.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Bob.
Yep. Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Next on the agenda is the economic development project lists. There are drafts enclosed in your package that came. Is there someone from Franklin County Industrial Development and Lake Champlain Islands Economic Development to provide an overview, or are you going to do that? Or is someone from staff going to do that?
I'll do a brief overview, but first I wanted to take a moment to introduce Andy Julo, who is, well, you can introduce yourself.
Oh, yes, I'm Andy Julo. I am the new executive director of the Lake Champlain Islands Economic Development Corporation, and this is day 3 on the job for me.
So as a brief overview, we did this last year too. The regional development corporations are tasked by the State Department of Economic Development to come up with a project list of economic development projects. In this latest round, I think they were given a month to turn something around. The lists, as of right now, are used to help prioritize Northern Border Regional Commission grant applications, giving some extra points to those who are on the list. Beyond that, I'm not sure how they're used or much more about it, but maybe Elizabeth or Andy could take it from there.
Well, I do know that, and I do work for FCIDC, so I do know that these lists are circulating apparently everywhere. They've taken on a life of their own. And the idea is to keep them updated. I think you'll see on the Franklin County list, we have the lists, we have two lists. One are what we ranked by priority. A lot of those, they were included in last year's list. They're in a slightly different order this year than they were last year. And we did that because the top four are kind of the larger infrastructure. The Fonda site in St. Albans, the St. Albans Town Industrial Park, the Franklin County State Airport, and then Montgomery has the septic system. Those are large projects. So we kind of moved them up to the top of the list. They were fairly close anyway. And then Healthy Roots obviously is near and dear to our hearts as Nrpc Board of Commissioners. And then you can read the rest of them. The second list are those that are being monitored. The Alberg Child Care Center came off of our list because it's on the Lake Champlain list. And then Richford Grocery has been so successful with Notch so far that we moved it off of the priority list onto the kind of to be monitored because they have some other ideas for that grocery. So CIDC's board did approve the list on Tuesday, I guess was just yesterday. It's hard to believe that it was just yesterday. So I think we're asking, and I know Andy, you have your list. I did want to note, we did not, we had to submit the list by the end of May, and I didn't have in time to get it in the board packet. Number 3, the airport, there's a series of X's. We didn't have the dollar amount, and it's $507,000 they've received to date. So just in case you're wondering what that amount was. So Andy, if you want to talk about does anybody have any questions? I figured you could read the short narratives. I didn't need to go down the list, but if anybody has any questions.
So is the action that's required tonight for this board to ratify the priority order?
I believe that is correct, Catherine.
That would be the request before the board, yes.
Okay.
Al, you have a question?
Al, you had a question?
Yes, please. Well, more of a concern. When I look at the list, I'm also thinking of employment opportunities and the creation of employment. And so I have a problem with the Fonda site. All you're doing is moving, I think, 4 to 7 employees up Federal Street from the railroad building to a new building at the old Fonda site. And I don't see that that's that much of an addition to creating employment for us. The St. Albans Town Industrial Park, the FDIC has done very, very little in terms of attracting new businesses to that. The only growth in the park has been existing businesses that have expanded, but we've gotten no new, if you will, customers in many years.
I would argue, and if you read the narrative, we have 3 potential businesses who are looking to move into the industrial park.
Well, then name them, because I'm aware of the glass recycling company, but wound up in Essex, and I was part of that effort to get them here.
Well, and I don't know that we knew that they went to Essex because,
that's what we've heard when we tried to buy some of their material.
Interesting.
That's one of my problems. So anyway, I would rather see that we focus in on the Franklin County Airport, because if we bring that sewer project up there, that opens up that whole field, and the airport is going to undergo expansion to a lot of different business enterprises, which will create a lot of more employment, if you will, in Franklin County. Lastly, I think that one of the top priorities should be the reestablishment of a web coordinator. The past coordinator did phenomenal work in linking businesses and education, and we've lost that opportunity. We need to have I believe that's as important as, or equally important to the airport money. So I'd like to see the airport moving up to number 1 and the reestablishment of a web coordinator up to number 2.
And Catherine, we talked about the WIB coordinator, and if you could help me remember what that conversation was, I think that we thought that we actually had considered taking off of the list only because we thought it was more directed to the Department of Labor versus this list is mainly for ACCD. And we thought that the WIB is better directed toward the Department of Labor.
Yeah, we did have that conversation, but I think the question begs to some of the confusion behind these lists. In that it is a little unclear as to what these lists are being used for, what the criteria are, what projects should be on them, what projects should be off of them. I asked for, but haven't seen any sort of clear instruction from the Department of Economic Development at the state that really defines that better. And so when you ask a question of a project, should a project like the WIB or Healthy Roots be on the list or off the list, it's hard to answer that question.
What is the significance of this list? What's the significance of being number 2 versus number 6?
Probably not really anything. Being on the list is definitely, we have found it does get you priority points again with Northern Borders. But
if you're in the top, if you're like in the top 5, I think you get some level of priority points for Northern Border Regional Commission grants.
And I think some of it is we considered where things are in certain processes, like the LVRT, MVRT, those are very hot topics right now. So those and they are important. So particularly for economic development. So that's why number 6, Healthy Roots. And we didn't necessarily jump anybody other than the top 4. We didn't jump anybody over. So like Healthy Roots, the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail, the MVR, the rail trails, and the WIB were in those order. If I recall last year, they just may have moved up as the Alberg and the Richford Pharmacy, came off.
So this is Bill. Do we have to list them by order of priority? I really feel like that if you're a member of any of these communities or you have a particular interest, and I deeply respect Al's interest in creating jobs and others' interests in trying to improve the downtown or village possibilities. But are we required to list them in a priority order? It seems to be something that to some degree makes it almost impossible for those lower than a certain priority to get attention.
Well, let me back up a little bit. So this is just to get us through the end of the month because we were requested to get it to by the end of the month. In June, we are meeting to do a priority based on a set of points that is predetermined, that includes job growth, job creation, I got a cat, and some other factors, the ability of the key person to handle it, where it is in funding and all of those things. So those are preset determinations. And we'll be using that ranking. So this list will change once we get that in June. This was kind of just the bridge to get us because it was required by the end of May, but it's not the final list that will drive next year. I think the next fiscal year, there will be a list that will actually use those criteria. So you will see another list probably in, I would guess, July.
So we would have an opportunity to react to that list
Yes,
in some official capacity too?
yes.
Because that sounds like a better, I would rather than list these as in a order of priority, have them submitted all of equal priority, just a bulleted list, and then see what that numerical ranking that is to be conducted next month results in, because that seems to have some of the metrics that we've already discussed here among participants that might be of value to understand better.
Okay. Well, the other thing I think that we would like, and I don't know what the capacity is, these are what we knew as, Catherine, me, Connie, I think Bethany and Greta were in on the conversation. If I left anybody out, I apologize. These are what we knew, what projects we knew. So if somebody has a project that you think should be on the list, let me know, or let staff know, and we can see where you fit, whether you're ready to be on the priority list to be considered or wherever, because we may not know every project that's out there.
So Al, I do see your hand, but I'm still trying to understand, Catherine, what is our role here? What are we doing? We've got one group that's presented a prioritized list, another group that's presented a list without priority. What is it we're reviewing? How, why, what do we need to do?
Okay, so Andy, the Lake Champlain Islands did prioritize their list. It just, they hadn't done it in time for inclusion in our board packet. So they do have a list that has priorities that I'm sure he's going to be presenting when it's Grand Isle's turn.
Okay.
We are asked to review, and if you so choose, endorse the project list in priority. This is something you're asked to do. It's not something you're compelled to do. So if you choose to do something that's part of that, like Bill suggested, endorsing the list without regard to priority, that's certainly an option on the table for you.
Al. You just muted yourself, Al.
Catherine, if we're not required, we don't go to jail if we don't send anything in, do we?
Well, the regional development corporations will probably send something in anyway. It would just be sent in without the concurrence of the regional planning commissions, because the regional development corporations are asked to or tasked with presenting this list to the state.
But would be a message if we did not comply.
It would be a message, yes.
Well, as a representative for the town of Bakersfield, I would really like to see our Brigham Academy project go before this committee that is making these decisions, because I frankly do think that that could have a very substantial impact in our community and our region. We need housing, and that is a way to get housing, particularly affordable housing.
Right.
And so I think that it's useful for us to endorse a list of projects, whether we prioritize them. Maybe that's something that is better done with some metrics that may be coming in the next month.
Well, and just so you know, Bill, that Brigham Academy and Colony Square were ranked 9 and 10 in part because they're housing and it's not economic development, although we can argue housing, transportation, childcare are huge drivers of economic development, but that's why they're 9 and 10. But to your point, maybe as a regional planning commission, we're looking more at a region level versus, well, I'm thinking in my head and I'm going to shut up because what I'm thinking doesn't make sense to myself. So.
I appreciate the clarification though. Thanks.
So Bill, I'm struggling a bit as you are, because I don't understand the criteria for prioritization.
So basically me, Tim and Connie, using the priority list from last year, we reprioritized moving the 4 larger projects up to the top because they're larger projects that are going to need additional funding. Then we took everybody and we moved Brigham Academy and Colony Square to the bottom because they're housing. And then everybody else basically stayed the same. We didn't dump anybody over. So they should be fairly consistent with last year. But did we have metrics saying this one created more jobs than that? On this list, we didn't because we didn't have time to get it to our board and your board in the board packets. That's what's going to come in July, potentially.
So can I move, Chair, can I make a motion?
Of course you can.
I would move that we submit this list without priorities as it presently stands, but not in 1, 2, 3, or 4, but just as a list with bullet points and leave it at that.
So
I would
just wanna make
second that
sure-
motion for purpose of discussion for certain.
So we've got a motion and a second. So to make sure I'm clear on the motion, we as the Northwest Regional Planning Commission would endorse that these projects are all priority projects without an order of priority.
Correct.
Does that accomplish what needs to be done?
I will just switch out the numbers for bullet points and they'll just stay in the same order, but they'll just be bullet pointed, and I will remove the in order by priority language.
And does that meet what you need from a grant perspective or a funding perspective?
I think so. I mean, it will be, they will, it's a good question because again, other than northern borders, we don't have a lot of direction. Again, this list is taken on a life of its own. But I think because we're coming up to the new fiscal year when a lot of the grant cycles will start, as long as we have the priority list with the criteria that you'll see in July, we should be well set.
So I know ours is not in the packet, but our board did meet today and we went through with the criteria step by step. And we did, there was one that didn't provide us with sufficient information and they got the lowest score, but everybody else were able to call out what we felt was good enough information to make a call on every one of the categories for the projects. So, we feel that they're not, we didn't rank them. We didn't say this is top, this is that. Them from top to bottom, and it was kind of a surprise what rose to the top and what didn't. My concern would be is if we don't play ball and everybody else does, then our projects sink to the bottom when this goes to the big pot.
Yes, Bob.
So I'd like to keep the 2 county discussions separate, Andy. First, my recommendation, Al, is and for the Franklin County, from as not being in Franklin County, I think you want to be careful that we word our statement as a regional planning statement, not as a Franklin County Development Council statement. So regional planning may support the projects that are on the list. The Franklin County Development Corporation is still fine to put theirs in the priority that they put. So I think that we don't have to overstate or have to overrule what the Development Council does on their letter as it goes in.
I wasn't talking about I wasn't talking about the industrial development. They're a totally separate corporation from my point of view. I was only speaking on behalf of the RPC.
Yeah, but the way Elizabeth worded it was how she was going to put the letter as the statement from both. And I think it's fine to say that Nrpc supports the projects and Franklin County Development Council supports the priority.
Okay.
Franklin County, who supports the priority?
That's the IDC.
Why are we making any comment? Aren't you submitting your own list? Isn't FDIC submitting their own statements?
Well, at the top, we had intended to say that this list was going to be had been approved by both boards. It would be the same statement on one piece of paper the same statement. So the statement would then be NRPC supports the list of projects. FCIDC and prioritizes the list of projects. So it'll be a wording. We'll have to separate the wording, but it's one list that's submitted.
Okay, in the future, I would rather see the FDIC submit their own letter and we submit ours.
Okay.
So I've got a motion and a second. Any other comments?
So
And
this is
to be clear, this is for the Franklin County projects, not for Grand Isle at this point. That's what
Correct.
we've been reviewing.
right. So we're going to have to do a separate motion for the Grand Isle.
Yes,
Or okay.
that's the plan.
And
I
then is that-
want Andy to have a chance to present his
yeah.
list first.
And that was a related question that I had. I feel like that we should be, or is it, if we give two separate approvals, one for Franklin County and one for Grand Isle County, that they're given equal weight by those who are assessing after us, rather than in having one list for Franklin and Grand Isle or the Northwest Regional Planning Commission.
So the way the ask was put out by the state, it's for each of the regional development corporations to submit their own separate list and to seek concurrence of the regional planning commissions. And so Andy will submit a list for Grand Isle County, FCIDC will submit one for Franklin County. And then as part of that submission, they'll include the regional planning commission role in reviewing the project. So it would be my recommendation if you're going to endorse the projects without priority for Franklin County, that you do the same for Grand Isle County, which doesn't preclude the RDCs from then submitting them as a priority, but it would just be clear that the RPC didn't endorse a particular priority order. If that makes sense, the way I just laid it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it would take a little bit of changing of the language in that first paragraph on each of them, just to make sure that it was these development corporations are making their priorities. We are agreeing that these projects are worthy of inclusion, but the priorities are those of the development corporations, not the regional planning commission.
So Bill, what I'll do, I'll send it to Catherine with the language just to
Do you
make
guys
sure.
feel comfortable that Catherine can review the language on our behalf?
Yes.
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 I do. Okay. So I've got a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
All right.
Aye.
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 I'm gonna
Opposed?
abstain.
Abstentions? We have one abstention. Okay, great conversation. Let's move to.
Did we want to talk about the Grand Isle projects at all?
Yes,
Okay, is that what you're moving on to?
yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
So Andy, do you have something you can present?
Yeah, I can put this up on the screen if
That'd be great.
Okay.
We got it.
You did, good, okay. Brand new laptop, I had to set the permissions here. All right, so you're looking at the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yeah, it's little, but it's up there.
It's like 10-point font. I had my reading glasses on all day looking at this.
Can you expand it at all, Andy?
I can probably zoom in on it. Let me see here.
We'll zoom out. Yeah,
That
okay.
works.
Oh.
So we have 9 projects on here, and one of them just has the lowest scores because we did not get information back from that project yet. So we had 10 slots. We went through. I'm just taking over. So my understanding is this was gone through the select boards just to be fair and even, and how it was done. And these were the projects, some of the projects that were returned. And so we have these 9 projects, and then we have this ranking criteria here, which came from the state, and I can zoom in on that too. Really kind of obtuse stuff, but each one of the answers that they gave, there was a ranking from 1 to 5. And then the job creation is actually pretty dialed in. So they have to estimate the number of jobs that they are creating or retaining, and then they get a score based on that. Give some estimation of the quality of benefits and overall benefit package, and then their wages compared to the rest of the region. And so the first one we had was the Grand Isle Lake House, and this is a historic building that has been used for weddings and events throughout the years. And with the pandemic, their caterer, their longtime caterer has gone bankrupt, and they have a new caterer, and they require some preservation and some expansion to make it economically viable. So we have them actually tied for 3rd and 4th place on our list. The Alberg Child Care Center, this is a child care center that's going to be attached to the school campus and provide currently child care facilities for 62 children. They are pretty far along in that process, and we have them ranked 5th. We have a change of hands on Shore Acres, which is an inn and restaurant in North Hero. They are looking to massively expand the property with a lakeside bar, an event tent, and they were seeking funding for that. They came in 4th in our ranking. Bayview Crossing is the CIDR. CIDR is the senior support organization in Grand Isle County. They are looking to build a senior housing center with 30 units. They are working with Cathedral Square. They are very far along, and they intend to start construction this fall. And they were tied for our top project. The courthouse, the North Hero Courthouse, has very limited parking, and it's been proposed that the parking actually has no room to expand, but it's just a dirt field, and it's not very efficient. They would like to pave it, get designated spaces so that they can use that space more efficiently, and that came out 7th on our list. Tied for the top was a new pub and brewery that is going to go into the new complex in South Hero, where CIDR is and the new fire department and library are. They are pretty much ready to go with that as well. They need just a little bit more funding. We have the Albert Slaughterhouse, and this is the one that wasn't able to get back to us. They're still working through some issues, but there is a proposal to build a slaughterhouse in Alberg. The Keeler Bay Campground and Marina is looking to actually migrate their marina further north for a number of reasons. And is seeking funding to do that. And then the Meeting House, which is many people know it as Granny's Attic in South Hero. The Select Board and the Northwest Regional Planning Commission are working together to try to restore that. The first floor has just been left abandoned by the fire department when they moved to their new site. So they would like to set up community meeting spaces in the basement of that building and provide some weatherization for Granny's Attic on the 2nd floor. And we had that ranked 6th on our list.
Can you go back to the criteria for just a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a maximum of 45 points. So there's 5 for project purposes and benefit.
Mm-hmm.
There's 5 for the project timeline and milestone, 5 for principal experience, project support and regional need. The project cost is actually split into 2 different 5-point categories, and then the job creation is actually split into 3. So the number of jobs that you'd be creating are retained, and then the quality of benefits and the wages compared to the region.
So job creation is about 1/3 of the overall scoring.
Yes. Yep.
And so when you look at the, your number one priority, what was the job score associated with that?
You know, that was, it's the two here, let's see, we've got 534. And I'm looking at that and 5 seems awfully high because 5 would be 51 jobs plus.
So, and that, what project was that? That was the senior housing?
Yes, that was the senior housing.
So is it an actual like nursed home?
It's independent living, but there are going to be some kitchen facilities there to expand Cider's operation for meal delivery.
So is the 51 plus thinking about construction jobs?
You know,
Temporary construction jobs?
I think that's absolutely wrong. I think that is not the correct number.
Yeah, I mean, when it flashed by, I was surprised by those numbers.
Yeah, there's no way that's correct. Let me, it should be here in the packet. So this is one that broke it out: staff cooks, dishwashers, Albert childcare. I think that got bumped down a row by mistake. Yep, here it is. Okay, Bayview Crossing. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is this is the proposed project will create and retain jobs following Vermont metrics that for every 10 apartments developed, 12 construction related jobs are created and 3 local jobs are sustained. The proposed housing units will create 43 construction related jobs and sustain 10 local jobs. So I guess it's not a typo, it's their calculation. In addition, the Cathedral Square housing model with SASH services creates new on-site permanent jobs at the housing development. 2 new on-site jobs will be created to support the housing.
So they're counting the temporary construction jobs.
They are
in this ranking. And should they be?
We really have no guidance to how construction jobs should figure into that.
Okay. I don't want to argue the ranking of these for me personally, but I do like the fact that there are some criteria that we can debate or not debate.
Agreed.
Yeah, I really appreciate this kind of quantitative analysis, and it's the descriptions that you gave with it were equally
succinct,
validating to really better understand the prioritizations.
Good.
And I would actually recommend that if it was possible, that the Franklin County effort be done in a similar fashion.
That's what you'll see in July. That's what we didn't have time to
Okay,
do, but
great.
that's exactly what we'll have in July.
Yeah, I think it helps us all a lot to make a better recommendation on our support of the lists.
Yeah, and me personally, I think that I can much more easily support prioritization when it's done in this fashion. Any questions for Andy?
So this is Bill. I would support a motion that is similar to the Franklin County one. I think that in essence, however, Franklin Grand Isle is actually a little bit ahead. They've given us what we may only see from Franklin County in July. So I almost feel like we could endorse the prioritization at this point too. But I don't know whether that's appropriate for us to do that right now. We could give it a more generic support where we endorse the prioritization. At the same time, we might review and then possibly consider endorsing the prioritization for Franklin County in July.
I'd like to make a motion that we support the prioritization and the list as just presented.
And who made the motion?
Brian Doobie.
Thank you, Brian.
I'll second that.
And we've got a second from,
Al Vogel.
thank you, Al. Other discussion?
Is this
Yeah,
only
this
for?
is Bill, does that create any kind of oddity when we endorse both the prioritization and the list for Grand Isle, but we only support the list?
Well,
Franklin
yeah,
County?
the explanation is there, there's more data. Before we could kind of get into a Bakersfield versus a Enosburg
Right.
Falls versus, St. Albans. And this is like, there's methodology that's been explained. And now, pending, I think we're hopeful I'm sure we're going to get the explanation in July, like has been promised. But I think it's inappropriate to act on the Franklin County without the methodology that was just presented by Grand Isle. And I think it is appropriate to go forward if or at least have the vote. I feel comfortable and, have the vote, see how it carries. But I mean, the numbers were presented. I'm comfortable. Let's see what the vote goes.
Other comments?
Is this just for 30 days again?
Do you know that, Andy? Are you guys going to resubmit something in July, or is this the list you're going forward with in July?
Oh, my understanding is we're going to turn this in the end of this month. So this Friday, we're turning this in. And I think what we'll do is we're going to try to be more inclusive and just build a list similar to this and just have it ready if this kind of request comes again. So we're not scrambling like we were, this time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, despite the fact that you characterize it as scrambling, you did an excellent job for being 3 days on the job, Andy.
Right.
I agree with
Thank you.
Bill. Yes.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? I'll take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Next agenda item is minutes of April 2021 meeting. They were enclosed in your packet. Any errors, omissions?
I'll move they be accepted as printed.
I'll second it.
Any comment?
Was seconded.
It was seconded, I believe, by Richard Noel.
Yeah.
It's the voice I think I heard.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next up is commission reports. Hopefully we can run through these fairly quickly. There is a written brief write-up for each of these. We'll go through in case people want to make comments. Finance and operations, Harold isn't here. Anything that they did not meet, they will be meeting in June to review the fiscal year 2022 budget. So I expect that we'll either hear something on this in July at the board level, right, Catherine?
Or June for the budget.
July or June?
June.
So the budget will come before the commission in June?
Yeah, next meeting.
Okay. Personnel Committee, Lori?
We did not meet in May. We had met in April. There are 3 positions. I did look at the website. There's an AmeriCorps, the Water Resources planner, and I forget the third one. Was it more of a short-term one, Catherine? The third position?
Yes, it's to help coordinate a prevention effort in Franklin, Grand Isle, and Chittenden counties.
Right. So those are 3 positions that are available. I think I saw a June early June deadline for applications for at least one of them. And then we'll be working on the evaluations, or we will be reviewing the evaluations later in the summer. That's it.
Thank you. The executive committee did meet. We had I would say a discussion on a very preliminary budget and work preview for FY22. We went through some legislative updates, and we had a good discussion on reopening plans. I would say in general, we acknowledge that, like the state, we want to have a goal to be back in full, what'll be the new normal operations by September, with some intermediate steps. And Catherine and the team are developing that plan for review and discussion at a future meeting. Project review, Alicia's not on. I think there's actually an action item associated with this. Can you take us through that, Bill?
Yeah, so in your packet on page 24 and 25, there are 4 projects that are before you for our meeting this past month, and 3 of them require a vote of this board. The first of those 3 is for the new Tractor Supply store being planned for development near the Hannaford Shopping Center on Sampsonville Road. The actual location is listed as 71 J View Drive. We found that it is of substantial impact for the region. It will certainly be for Enosburg, but also likely for many of the communities around it. The second is Act 250 for the city of St. Albans for the new pool and complex that supports the pool. Many of you probably have read about this. It's a very significant upgrade of the pool facilities for the city, and we believe it too will have a substantial regional impact because of the community engagement likely to go beyond just St. Albans City. And then the last that has a substantial regional impact, we've talked to you about this in past meetings. This is the battery energy storage, battery energy supply storage. That's what BESS stands for. This is a project in Georgia on Ballard Road where energy that might be created by solar panels in the day or wind turbines when it's windy and it's not all used on the days that it's created could be stored and then used when the peak requires that. And it's very important to these kinds of energy projects. It's the first in Franklin County. I believe there's one more in Rutland and maybe another elsewhere in the state, but it's likely to be something not only of substantial regional impact for us, but we'll probably see more of these in our region. The fourth is not one that we are ready to take any action on yet. We have actually asked for some additional information there. We're really kind of curious about the circumstances there and need to better understand it. So staff is sending questions for that. So I think we can take all 3 at one motion if that would be something someone was willing to do relative to accepting these project reviews for substantial regional impact, despite the fact that all of them are in conformance with the regional plan.
The request is that we have a motion to ratify these 3 projects as reviewed by the committee.
So
thank you. One question for you on the Georgia BESS project. What about that made it substantial regional impact?
Yeah, we believe that because it is tied to the broader energy demands and uses and distribution in the region, that it is likely to be much more than just for the community of Georgia, and hence it has a regional impact. And because it's all of the sustainable energy projects that can feed that battery energy storage system, it's likely to be a substantial one.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
No, just to back what Bill was saying, this is the reason sometimes we see the windmills not operating when they could be, because there's not sufficient storage in the lines. This battery backup would help with running those pieces of machinery during the peak times and stored in the batteries, even though you couldn't put it in the lines. And solar is the same way, you can't shut them off.
Mhm.
So it's a good backup.
Other questions, comments?
I
Can
don't
get
think I heard a
motion?
second, but I will be happy to.
What's that?
I said, I don't think I heard a second.
I don't think we got a motion yet, did we?
Yes, I made the motion.
Oh, okay, thank you. And I've now got a second. Sorry. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Bill. Let me find my place here. Transportation Advisory Committee, Harold isn't here.
I could pitch in a little bit. We had a meeting just shortly before this one to cover a new system of prioritizing projects, and Bethany will be presenting it. We had to have the meeting today for the reason there was a deadline end of May, which she thought was end of June, but we covered all the bases.
So will that list come before us at our June meeting?
Barclay, will they?
So I can answer that. So the half of the list will be so the TAC is going to finish the process in June for projects that the TAC itself has identified, and then the full list of projects that both VTrans identified and the TAC identified as potential projects will come before the full board, and you'll have the opportunity to review their work and ratify their results if you so choose.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany.
Energy Committee, Bob?
The Energy Committee did not meet, but you'll see at the end of your package, there's a reference to, it's the right term. You're gonna have your energy forum in June 2nd. If anyone is interested in the planning forum.
Thank you. Brownfields did not meet. Regional Plan Committee, Lynn?
We met and Catherine helped us work out a schedule so that we'll be reviewing the current regional plan, going over proposed changes and additions.
Thank you.
That's it.
Lynn, question, where are you guys with the
your rent and utility bills due to recent unemployment or financial hardship caused by the COVID-19 pandemic?
I don't know what that is. It's not me.
Not me either.
Eligible households can receive up to 12 months of
Yeah.
The region metrics.
Oh, you know, there's a lot of trouble with them because a lot of people haven't kept up because of COVID. Apparently they had other things to worry about than statistics. So, you know, if Mark is able to get them done, they probably won't mean as much as they usually do. So I think that Catherine's thinking about, you know, having somebody take a look at them and see to go forward. One of our problems is that we have the data that people collect, not the data that we necessarily want. So it's probably time to reevaluate.
Okay, that's fair. If it's, we need to pick metrics that we can actually keep updated without a ton of work, right? So.
Right. And that tell us something that we want to know.
The Municipal Plan Review Committee did not meet. Vermont Economic Progress Council, Al? Al, are you muted?
The city of St. Albans will appear tomorrow at BEPSI to adjust their TIF contract.
Do you foresee any problems with that?
I honestly don't know. No, I haven't heard from Dominic on any issue. I doubt it personally. I think it's with Kingman Street.
Okay. GMT, Bob?
GMT at our last board meeting went through our draft strategic plan, and we're in the middle of union contract negotiations. So we're hearing the inside story on that as we go along. I think, I'm trying to remember, the target is June to have those contracts completed, if I remember right, Catherine, at the end of June. So we're getting close.
Thank you. Clean Water Advisory Committee didn't meet. Healthy Roots, Brad's not here. Anything to report on that from staff?
The advisory committee meets tomorrow.
Okay. And Northwest Vermont Regional Foundation, anything to report on that?
No, nothing new.
Staff reports? Office staff?
I can offer just one update is field season's here. We've secured 2 interns to help with field work this year, helping collect culvert inventories, road erosion inventories, and any traffic counts requests that we get from towns, which are starting to come in. And then what I'm working on just this week has been a lot of site visits for the Municipal Roads Grants and Aid Program and helping towns select projects for this construction season to improve water quality. And it's just been nice after a long winter to reconnect with all the towns and find out how the season went. And so it's been good weather and nice conversations with towns.
Thank you. Greta, anything you'd like to bring us up to speed on?
Yeah, well, I'll just note that next week I'm collaborating with Northwest Tobacco Prevention Coalition and Franklin County Caring Communities on a workshop on the new cannabis regulation. So the workshop's titled Municipal Perspectives in Cannabis Regulation and Prevention. So we're covering sort of just unpacking that legislation a bit from the municipal perspective and considering how to incorporate and consider youth prevention as the marketplace is developed. So that is next Thursday, June 3rd, from 6 to 8 p.m. And you can find information on how to register if you're interested in attending on our website.
Thank you.
Greta,
Yes.
Greta, did I read correctly that the legislature changed the rules so that towns have to opt out of allowing marijuana to be sold, or is it still the municipality has to approve it?
I believe how the final bill was passed, so that you do have to opt in to allow for it.
You have to opt in. Okay.
Correct. You have to have a vote in order for retail to be allowed in your community.
Okay.
Otherwise, it is not.
And that's a citizen vote.
Correct. Australian ballot.
Yep. Thank you.
Catherine, anything else you'd like to bring us up to speed on?
I have a couple quick items, but Emily, you want to jump in first?
I didn't see Emily there. Sorry.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. So a couple quick items. I think Bob mentioned it, but the Regional Energy Forum, which is in collaboration with the Department of Public Service and the Lamoille County and NVDA in the NEK, is happening on June 2nd. And so that's a really great, exciting opportunity. And then beyond that, working on a number of projects, some that are coming up, working on Alberg with a recreation master planning project, working with the town of South Hero on their meeting house, and working with the city of St. Albans as they, and the Almond Blossoms Child Care Center as to expand that.
Thank you, Emily.
I'll just add a couple of quick items. One is that we did have a great forum on the American Recovery Plan Act. That's on our website. VLCT did a second one. The recording of that is on their website. So stay tuned for more information as it keeps pouring in about municipal funding coming through in ARPA. The nominating committee did meet this week and began planning for the transition of officers in July. So some of you may be hearing from me. And then finally, I'll just note that Mark, our AmeriCorps Vista person who's been with us for almost a year, actually was offered his dream job and will be ending his service with us early. So he's leaving as of this week and heading back home to New Jersey, where he got offered a great job doing economic development in his county planning office in the county where he grew up and wanted to move back to. So he couldn't say no when given a chance like that. So we'll miss him. He did great work for us.
Well, congratulations to him. His gain is our loss, I guess. Anything else, Catherine?
No, that's it. Send people our way if you know good people who want to work for regional planning.
Are you getting a lot of interest?
We are getting some interest, and I would define it as quality interest. So quality is what matters in this game.
Quality is much better than quantity when you're
That's
looking
right.
to fill a position.
What jobs are you looking for, Catherine?
We have a water resources planner, and then we have 2 AmeriCorps positions, one Mark's position, and then another an eco field. So those are more service position like the domestic Peace Corps, but the professional job is the water resources planner.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to raise under commission reports? Hearing none. Anybody have anything they'd like to discuss under commissioner announcements?
I'd just like to bring up the zoning administrator issue that we had been discussing for well over a year, Catherine. It's now in operation. Highgate has a zoning administrator 2 days a week. And what, 2 days in Sheldon or 1 day in Sheldon, Catherine? 1 day in Sheldon. So we have a circuit zoning administrator. And it's working out pretty well. We didn't have enough business for a full-time one. And this is working out. Seems to be at this point.
And when I talked to him today, the words he used were, "I really like zoning."
Oh,
So
that's like, I really like milking cows.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, that's good.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to raise under commissioner announcements? Colleen, I noticed that you did join us, so we'll make sure we add you to the was here list. Was here, but on mute. Motion to adjourn.
There we go. Okay, I'm on now.
Yes, you are.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion, second. Any discussion?
Catherine, can I speak to you a little bit after?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
you
you.
also.